Welcome to Book 2 in the Horrors and Hoagies series, Tortured Souls. In this, we will cover the 5th chapter. In this book, we encourage you to immerse yourself in the exciting events that unfold. From thrilling action scenes to heart-pumping moments of suspense, Tortured Souls is sure to keep you on the edge of your seat. We appreciate your support and hope that you continue to enjoy the journey we have in store for you. Thank you for enjoying the story, and we look forward to sharing more with you in the upcoming chapters. Chapter 5, Lonely Hearts.
Dom spun a golden poker chip as he sat at the small table. He was fixated as it traveled around an ashtray and several empty glasses before coming to a halt after encountering a groove in the well-used surface. The table was dilapidated like the surrounding environment. It was shrouded in a haze of cigarette smoke and concealed in deep shadows. Although there were lights, they only brightened the modest stage and guided patrons to their seats or the bar. Each speakeasy in the city, such as Lonely Hearts, remained illegal establishments. They were unique to their neighborhood, with the affluent area hosting a luxurious venue for the wealthy and renowned to meet. The working-class establishments and police stations were more simplistic, catering to their respective patrons. Less desirable parts of town had alleyway dives, including this one that dated back to well before the Prohibition era. All designed to comfort their customers by the criminal organizations that had maintained them. Dom had reluctantly resumed his visits to this place. He made the choice a few weeks ago, driven by desperation rather than genuine desire. Since his injury, he had resorted to stealing bottles of low-quality alcohol to numb the excruciating pain that had engulfed his body after being touched by a ghoul. As time passed, the intensity of the headaches and body aches had escalated to an unbearable level, and his meager supply of alcohol no longer provided relief. Despite his father's attempts to introduce him to more high-end establishments in the city, he adamantly refused and continued to frequent Lonely Hearts between cases. As of late, visiting the dive bar had become a nightly ritual to numb his pain. Lorenzo discovered the bar by chance and mentioned it during a case, only to return a week later. Over time, he encountered its owner, Adela. They immediately developed a strong affinity for each other. She expressed concern for him and discovered some exceptional quality liquor that alleviated his troubles. How a low-end establishment like a dive bar obtained $30 whiskey in bulk was never explained. Dom never felt compelled to inquire. He valued her soothing gaze and, after several visits, the gentle touch of her skin upon his. They lacked any form of a relationship, merely two individuals in a state of brokenness seeking solace. The realization she was involved with someone else only came a few days ago when they unexpectedly stumbled upon him at her residence. Anticipating a furious and aggressive partner, he was surprised to find a stunning woman with a soothing voice displaying utmost empathy and understanding. Noticing the 12 vacant glasses on his table led him to the realization that Adela's finest concoctions were no longer as effective as they once were. He conceded that a few of those beverages were to alleviate his anxiety, considering that he was not a frequent patron. He lifted an unoccupied glass to signal Adela at the counter, and in response, she briefly displayed a sorrowful expression before retrieving his customary bottle from the uppermost shelf. The discomfort resurfaced, and its intensity was overwhelming. The throbbing in his head intensified, and he perspired. His hands trembled, and his eyesight became blurry. The agony was excruciating. Initially, it had only been a disorienting headache, but it gradually worsened over a week. When it first struck, it had incapacitated him for days, and it took another week for his supply to alleviate it enough to regain his mental clarity. Jackie, Dom's partner, had expressed concern. Despite their worries, he persisted in seeking treatment from the nearest unqualified practitioner. His new acquaintance, Artem, was out of the country with his employer, leaving them with no other options. They both preferred to avoid the complications of finding a legitimate doctor. Over time, Dom assigned Jackie a task to keep him occupied and away from him, allowing him to endure his discomfort in solitude. After rescuing him from the war, Dom was burdened with Jackie, a unique creature that defied easy description. While some saw him as a charming child or a small man in a zoot suit, those with a keen eye could detect the jack-o'-lantern head, creeping vines, and fiery passion that burned within. Despite being mostly harmless, Jackie had limited comprehension of human affairs, and he struggled with kleptomania. While his time in New York had expanded his knowledge, his idiosyncrasies were now a source of entertainment and occasional danger. Dom had become an unconventional mentor to Jackie. However, Dom's authority over the situation has diminished lately. Eventually, he resorted to dishonesty with Jackie. Dom dispatched Jackie to uncover the culprit responsible for a wave of sandwich shop thefts orchestrated by pigeons. To Dom's surprise, Jackie wholeheartedly embraced the mission of rescuing the sandwiches from these troublesome avian thieves. The job kept Jackie busy night and day, allowing Dom time to get lost in a bottle. Picturing Jackie perched on some gothic rooftop in search of bird-based criminal activity was enough to bring a slim smile to Dom's face. He didn't like lying to Jackie, but he'd be damned if it wasn't a funny situation. Adele approached his table discreetly, carrying a soothing beverage. Attempting to engage in conversation, she observed him retrieving a bottle of pain relievers from his coat pocket. She knew as well as Dom did that those did not affect his pain. He took a handful of them out of habit. She gently grasped his hand, her touch tender and comforting. In that fleeting moment, she ensured he had a secure grip on his fresh beverage, providing him solace. With a determined effort, he mustered the most genuine smile he could before swiftly consuming the pills and finishing his drink. Adela remained in Dom's presence for a fleeting moment, her apprehension for his well-being persisting even as she indulged him with alcohol. Inwardly, she harbored a quiet fear that her actions aided his downfall. When he expressed gratitude towards her, his eyes caught sight of her precise attire, which exuded an air of professionalism unsuited for their surroundings. It evoked memories of the waiter's uniform at Babylon. Sometimes, memories can hurt as much as getting punched in the gut. Dom quickly averted his gaze before Adela glimpsed how deeply the Babylon attack had shattered him. She wasn't present during the chaos. Almost everyone who was there either got brutally maimed or killed. The horrific incident haunted his dreams whenever he managed to catch some shut-eye. It was yet another reason why he sought solace in alcohol rather than seeking proper rest. Dom had no idea how much Adela despised her role in ruining him. She had received instructions even before he set foot in the place. Papa Mac's beloved blonde Russian had personally visited the staff and commanded him to welcome Dom without any trouble, serve him drinks in the house, and not bother him. After Dom left her apartment on their first encounter, Adela couldn't forget the terrifying incident with the Russian woman, who called herself Polina. Emerging from the shadows like a furious mugger, she brandished the biggest weapon Adela had ever laid eyes on. The woman exuded a malice reminiscent of an overprotective older sister. Adela had said it was a coincidence. But the blonde wasn't happy about it and sniffed Adela like a dog while pushing her against the apartment door. It was a scary moment of awkward silence as Adela's fate hung in the balance. After the strange ritual was over, Polina's attitude changed. She let Adela go and gave her a friendly pat on the shoulder with a smile. When the accidents continued, Polina approached in a gentler and less heavily armed way, with some extra precautions. The precautions were strictly adhered to, mainly involving avoiding the same route when returning home at night and ensuring they weren't being followed. Polina needed those moments of solace as much as Dom did. Adela's wandering thoughts were interrupted as the stage lighting in the Lonely Hearts Club shifted. A stunning woman, dressed to impress in a ruby-scaled outfit and intricate headdress, took center stage. Her voice was like an angel, filling the room with peace and beauty as she sang of love, loss, and the passage of time. For 30 minutes, the speakeasy was captivated by her performance, grateful for the respite from their worries and cares. Adela felt a sense of relief as she leaned on Dom's shoulder for a moment, letting go of some of her worries. "Wow, I adore her," she exclaimed, enjoying the music. Dom nodded, acknowledging her sentiment.
You have a knack for choosing amazing people.
Adela playfully punched Dom's shoulder before she reluctantly made her way back to the bar. No longer preoccupied with his condition, Dom shifted his attention to more urgent concerns. He snatched the shiny golden chip from the table and examined it closely. Papa Mac's calling cards were unmistakable. Each chip's design mirrored a playing card suit, indicating a specific task or favor to do. The chip served as an invitation to meet the notorious crime boss. While many would consider it an honor, Dom viewed any obligation as a damnation, especially with his pounding headache and no assistance. Dom was apprehensive when the gangster summoned him due to numerous factors. Dom's exclusive connection to Papa Mac's family intensified his discomfort during their encounters. Dom's upbringing had been entrusted to Lorenzo, Mac's trusted confidant, who had assumed the role of a surrogate father during Dom's rebellious adolescence. Dom's job as a private eye was commonly at odds with Papa Mac's criminal empire. As Dom matured, he began to clash with the blood-sucking mafia boss. As a teenager, the surge of hormones and anger led to endless verbal confrontations. Lorenzo was caught in the middle, striving to prevent fatal encounters whenever their paths crossed. Dom recalled a particularly savage argument with Mac that ended as he stormed off to yell his frustrations into the cold rain of a late October storm. He dragged himself home hours later, soaked to the bone, only to find a fateful letter in the mail waiting for him. It was a "to whom it may concern" from the United States War Department. He had cracked it open, filled out the form, and gone before Lorenzo made it home. He lied about his age, of course. He would have been too young to serve if he hadn't. He'd spared only enough time to scribble an angry letter for Lorenzo to find later far too late to stop him from getting on the bus that night. He had a rough time during his stint in the army, with death and destruction all around him. Sadly, he lost all his comrades and commanders except for one. The pain of being the only survivor made him turn to alcohol, his constant companion since. After the war, Dom returned to the States with a tiny companion he met during the final moments of the battle. The little pumpkin held onto him tightly throughout the journey until they finally arrived at New York Harbor, where Lorenzo eagerly awaited him on the pier. When Dom first saw his dad, he was cautious. He anticipated punishment, rage, annoyance, or anything but what the fancy-dressed vampires showed him. Since it was daytime, Dom was fully protected by clothes and an umbrella, resembling a parody of a wealthy gentleman. However, Lorenzo didn't hesitate. He simply approached Dom and embraced him tightly, careful not to break him in half. Dom could have handled anger and judgment. Deep down, he longed for it. Surprisingly, Lorenzo's overflowing affection hurt him more than any harm that Bloodsucker could have caused. He spent the next couple of years wandering the city until he stumbled upon a spot to crash and started working as a private investigator. Then, he believed teaming up with the police would help him avoid the shadier characters within his family. However, he quickly discovered that criminals and lowlifes were willing to shell out a lot more cash for his services than what the bulletin boards at the police stations offered. Lorenzo would frequently show up, ignoring Dom's efforts to push him away, always seeking assistance with small jobs whenever Dom struggled financially. Dom recognized Lorenzo's determination to remain a part of his life, regardless of how much Dom tried to create space between them. On the other hand, Jackie had grown thick as thieves with Lorenzo, with the vampire always welcoming him with a hug. It did not matter how many hand signals or stern talks he'd had with his seed-brained attachment. Lorenzo would sit for hours as Jackie amused him with stories and theories about everything he could come up with. It had led to one particularly unbearable hangout during which Lorenzo declared a gentleman such as Jackie shouldn't go around in the old button-up shirts Dom had gotten him. He returned a week later with a smaller version of his fancy suits, done up Jackie-sized, so he could strut around town in style. His ride had finally shown up. The singer's performance wrapped up as a fancy-looking guy entered the club. Frankie, the bouncer, followed him for a bit to point out Dom before going back to his post by the door. Dom didn't recognize the man, but he was a vampire. The guy wasn't in a rush. He strolled over to the bar and chatted with Adela, talking business. They swapped a thick envelope, probably full of cash, and he grabbed a clipboard with a list of things she needed and some business records. Dom kept an eye on him while they whispered nervously and glanced in his direction. They tried to be sneaky, but Dom's detective instincts knew what was up. They were talking about him and what might happen next. After finishing up, the guy headed over. He cleared his throat politely to let Dom know he was there. But Dom chugged the last of his drink and popped a few more pills. Strangely, they sent this guy instead of Lorenzo, who usually did the dirty work for Papa Mac. After a few unsteady moments, Dom grabbed his hat from the chair and struggled to put it on his head. The pain was overpowering the effects of the alcohol, making his legs feel like jelly. He managed to give Adela a tired wave, but she only responded with a nod. With nothing left to do but listen to the music, he allowed the suit to guide him out the door. His lungs seized up as soon as he stepped into the chilly air. He had to lean on Frankie's muscular frame to steady himself before making his way down the alley, still wobbling. Adela hustled to tidy up Dom's table in the speakeasy, but couldn't move fast enough to escape a clash with Daphne. From the corner of her eye, the bartender caught sight of Daphne's vibrant ruby dress and prepared herself for the unavoidable lecture her partner would deliver. Daphne enveloped Adela with her hands as she inspected the table.
"You must be diluting his drinks, darling. He'd be 6 feet under if you weren't."
Adela grumbled.
"I don't enjoy serving those damn drinks, Daph. I don't want to, but I have to follow orders."
She was unhappy about being instructed to encourage the man to drink since he consumed so much whiskey and pills during his visits. It bothered her that the alcohol she was giving him was reserved for special guests, who were either close friends or met a terrible fate at the hands of Papa Mac's enforcers. The whole situation was both frustrating and depressing, with her loyalty to Papa Mac's family at odds with her desire to save the wayward detective. Daphne whispered sweet nothings in her ear and gave her a soothing shoulder rub to relieve the stress that had settled in her upper back.
"If your guy drank all that whiskey with his blood thinners, he's not gonna make it through the hour, let alone the night,"
she warned.
"I don't know why that Russian lady told you to off that poor guy, but he's as good as dead now."
Adela was shocked by the revelation. Daphne was right. She had given him enough high-end booze to put the hardiest sailor down for a week in a few hours, and he was magnifying the effect with his little pills. She had killed him. By God, she killed Papa Mac's chosen son. She emptied her hands and blasted through the door with Frankie. He took a few steps away from her. He knew better than to get in her way when she was in this mood. As she dashed out of the alley, she glimpsed Dom helped into a sleek black car. He looked like he was in agony and was coughing uncontrollably. The driver appeared panicked as he gently helped the sick detective into the backseat. As soon as he saw Adela approaching, he quickly jumped into the driver's seat and sped off into the chilly evening. She shouted at them while sprinting at full speed. The thought of him dying, knowing that she had willingly turned into his killer, was unbearable for her. She continued screaming after them, even when the car vanished from sight.